Please be seated. Good evening, councillors, and welcome to this evening's extraordinary council meeting. Before we formally commence this evening's business, can I please remind all members of the following. Please remain focused on the topic being discussed during the debate and avoid repeating points which have already been made. Please avoid interrupting other councillors and respect the position of the Lord Mayor. During the debate, please indicate by show of hands, and I will then call you as appropriate. Please also remember questions and responses are given without debate. Please can members rise on any point of order which relates to an alleged breach of a standing order or statutory provision and specify which standing order or statutory provision they consider has been broken. Any personal explanation by a member must be confined to some part of a former speech which appears to have been misunderstood in the debate. We will now move on to agenda item 1 on page 3 of the agenda, which relates to the report on the response to the consultation on the proposed Devon and Torbay devolution deal. Councillor Bialik, I understand you will introduce this item.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. There is one recommendation with two parts in which I would move, and once seconded I will then speak to Lord Mayor.
Do we have a seconder?
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Bialik.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The paper outlines the Council's proposed response to the devolution deal which is being proposed by the Devon County Council and Torbay Council, which are the upper tier unitary authorities. The discussion around devolution, Lord Mayor, has been going on for a few years now on what it may or may not look like. So this is the combined authority, with the county combined authority will be two constituent members, which is Torbay Unitary and the Devon County Council. I feel sure members will speak momentarily in relation to the governance, and I'd be pleased to listen to a number of these remarks. But of course the legislation is clear at this moment in time that district councils are not constituent members, although we are effectively will be the suffered around the table without any voting rights. Lord Mayor, the response is quite clear. We are noting the remarks, we are not agreeing to it because there are many parts that we do not agree with, and most of that is contained within our response to the County Council consultation process, which needs to be within the next 2 to 3 days. And this is why, one of the reasons we've had the extraordinary meeting to discuss this evening. The timetable is there on page 3 of our papers, Lord Mayor, which sets out the process going forward. There will be speculation and comment, no doubt, as to what will or won't happen should there be a general election throughout this period, because some of this is still going through Parliament. The reality of it is, what I would say to the members, we have to deal with the position as it is confronts us at this moment in time. From a political point of view, Lord Mayor, devolution will be with us in one form or another. Whether that is a return of a reconstructed Conservative government or a new Labour administration who is committed, they are committed to devolution, to handing back some of the levers and, where possible, some finance to local areas. What I'm pleased to be able to say, should the Labour government come into office, that it will not be a one-size-fits-all. In other words, Lord Mayor, we will not have a mayor imposed upon us. There will be no set structure imposed upon us. It will be bespoke deals. And so it's very important that we are in a position of sat round the table, although at this moment in time, without voting rights, hopefully, and I didn't think prior to now, Lord Mayor, I was a fan of the Lords, but they have proposed amendments, although being rejected by government, which would give districts a say around the combined authority. I'm pleased to say Labour is committed to that, and so I would hope that we would be sat around that table with voting rights. But even though we're not got voting rights around that table at this moment in time, that doesn't stop us having our say. And at the moment, the districts are quite noisy and quite loud in putting our case across for the districts. So this deal at the moment, which is something like £16 million, which is no great thing, to be brutally honest, because we've got a paper in a moment. We're going to be proposing to spend half as much as that on one item. So it ain't going to change the county significantly, sadly. £8 million will be put towards on the housing strategy, and you've got skills, which will be able to bring down something like £15 million, which is already allocated actually to the skills agenda, but no control. It's centrally controlled, and this will allow the CCA to take control of that in consultation with us. Very important for local democracy that we have a say in where that goes. The other area, of course, is transport. And so I would acknowledge at this time, it is disappointing and sad that our friends in Plymouth were not able to be part of the deal. Their reasons mainly around the highways and also the transport issues, they felt they couldn't be a part of it. That indeed was their decision. From the district, we aren't involved, but hopefully through this process, we will be listened to a bit better going forward when it comes to highways and transportation issues. Lord Mayor, we all know in Exeter in particular, transport is very important. And I did have to report to you last night that the bus was late, although my bus was on time today. And you cannot have that situation going forward. We need a reliable transport links in this city if we are to have modal change and to start getting people to shift from their cars onto public transport. So it's very important that we're part of that conversation, Lord Mayor. We're talking about it, talking to bus companies about the electrification of their fleet here in Exeter in particular, to deal with some of the climate and emission issues. With regard to the report, Lord Mayor, I've spoken to the leaders of the other groups, and I think it was a constructive conversation. And just as with Paul Arnold, who is the leader of East Devon District Council, and myself, we've already made proposals in relation to the various advisory committees that will sit around the CCA, feeding in. One of those advisory committees will be the districts, where we feed in on those issues, will be education, they will feed in, and also will be business. And the leaders from the opposition group have asked us to include in the report, and I will include in the report going forward, because it's the report as opposed to the recommendation, that we will be seeking to ensure that not-for-profit businesses are representatives, in other words, social enterprises, and together with the voluntary and community sectors, the third sector. We want them involved around the table. When it comes to the formation of that business committee, it's not the boys' club, it's not the great and the good. It will be a defined process of criteria, what they can bring to the table, and how the county will be represented in the business world, which will be the same on education. So all that is the detail to come forward. Discussions have been happening, Lord Mayor, and I'm quite confident that if we amend the report to include this, I would like to think that there will be representation on that board. Although advisory group, I don't particularly like the word board because it gives it a status which it really shouldn't have. So I'm quite sure that advisory group would take that on board. So at this moment, Lord Mayor, I'll rest on that, but just by ending by saying, we had a choice. We could have said that we don't agree with it, and there's much in it not to agree with. More not to agree with than to agree with, I would argue. And so therefore, should we just say we don't want to be part of it? Well, the sad thing is, if Torbay and Devon County Council approve it, it will happen. It will happen. So we can be outside the tent, Lord Mayor, or inside the tent, Lord Mayor. And I'd rather be inside the tent. I can assure you that we do have a voice, the districts have a large voice. We do have a say. And as I say, I, Paul Arnott, and the districts, we may not ever vote around the table, but we certainly have a substantial voice. And the Chief Executive and other Chief Executives know full well that the districts have a great say. We should have a better say, we want a better say, I'm hopeful. So the deal isn't that good, but it's about coming forward, what the changes will be, how we see the changes with the change of a government, Lord Mayor, and I feel we should be up at the line, ready to go. I don't want to be sat back waiting, that say there's the first 100 days of a new government, wanting to bring about change, wanting to do stuff, and I want Exeter to be in the forefront of that. We've got a number of projects that we are trying out for funding that we want done, and I want to be in the forefront on behalf of the whole council and the city, putting the case for Exeter in any deal. And that doesn't necessarily mean a local government reorganisation, which is just putting in another tier of bureaucracy, which we are not going to fund. We don't fund it. I want to be able to put our arguments to those people centrally. So, Lord Mayor, I would recommend that the recommendations, as we say, that we note the deal on the table and that we approve the submission of the city in the consultation with those amendments to the report with regard to the third sector organisations, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. This matter will now be open for debate. I've already seen Councillor Michael Mitchell indicate. So Councillor Mitchell, then Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like the Leader to settle before I make my opening statement to say that I totally agree with every word he said. So I'd just like to get that on the record there. Yeah, you can make a note of that. First time for everyone. I think we've got to be concerned about the direction this takes us in. We all welcome additional funds in local government. But in effect, what we're seeing here is just a movement of funds that would come to us directly anyway, or through another body, or be given to the higher tier authority. This is a higher tier authority arrangement. We aren't even passengers. We're on the outside, and as we're saying, we want to get the best arrangement we can for the district councils. My understanding, having taught politics for a number of years, devolution was a transfer, I remember my quotation, from a greater to a lesser power. You're giving it down. My worry with this and the arrangement which is bespoke in Devon, there's a danger of that power going in the opposite direction because the funders in the end make the decisions. And we are not a part. Whilst we can bid for it, I'd much rather the funds were coming to Exeter and Exeter made its choice on its funds and Exeter is accountable to its electorate. Because we've got a danger here of decisions made on our behalf, which aren't necessarily our priorities. There's somebody else's semi-elected body's decisions about what happens. So I know that the report we've got here is very similar to ones that every district council in Devon has agreed. I think that's a good sign that the district councils, irrespective of their political control and their membership, are all on the same page as this. All I say, give the detail, is taking £1 million to set it up over 3 years. That £1 million could have filled a few potholes, I thought, with Devon County Council. There's 16 million they've got to spend, and they've got to, believe it or not, this is government, central government thinking for you, they've got to spend the 16 million before they're officially set up. So goodness knows how they're going to make their decisions. 8 million, as I say, is homes reallocated, the other is on highways, and some authorities already in the district are putting in bids in relation to ideas for that. So I am concerned that, in effect, instead of devolution simplifying local government in Devon, we've got a complex structure now. We're effectively having 3 level tiers of local government. As we know, the whole thrust of central government and the Conservative government and the localism bill that came in is to make local government bigger. Somehow bigger is more effective. Somehow having a directly elected mayor solves all your problems. Well, we know in Devon, we've got common sense down here. Devon is not as unique, but we have, as the leader will keep on saying, we have our coastal areas, we have our city areas, and we have our rural areas, each with different needs and different demands. And I hope that, for goodness sake, this doesn't become a Trojan horse for a unitary authority for Devon. And I hope we safeguard our position as district councils in whatever happens under whatever government is formed post the general election, to ensure that local communities are represented and are not swallowed up into a much larger authority in the longer term. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. And now have Councillor Moore, then Councillor Hannaford. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm going to be sitting down because there's going to be an outbreak of consensus going on here. In the recommendation, it's actually a foregone conclusion of what's going to happen, so it's appropriate that we noted, although on the front of the letter it does say, with the consent of all councils affected. Well, I do think our council will be affected, even though everybody else is pretending it is not. And the most important reason why it's affected, which Councillor Mitchell has also highlighted, is the fact that it's moving powers away from our local communities, the people who we are here to serve. And as a district council, we are very close to our communities. So we actually need to send a very strong message from this council that this new body has got to make a significant impact from day one. And there is a very grand paper that we have all seen and read with a lot of ambition in it, and that needs to turn into reality pretty quickly. And I agree with you, Leader, that actually we need to be focusing on transport as one of our key priorities. It talks in the document about taking powers away from Devon County Council. Maybe that's a very good thing, because something has to change in order to work better with this city council to address transport needs of the city and those who travel in and out of it on a daily basis. I am pleased, however, that the document makes clear reference to the environment, and I hope that the measures, for example, in the local nature recovery strategy, actually enables us as a district council to make better provision, protection and enhancement of the environment in our local plan. I am absolutely gobsmacked that the document from government uses the term climate emergency. That is incredible and important. It, however, misses the point, putting it down at 2050, because we need to act now, and that must be an absolute priority for this new body to get its head around every single thing that it does. And I would hope, and I'm pleased to see in the report, that it highlights retrofit. Warm houses across the city are absolutely vital, and we have wasted 3 years of faffing around in this council about whether or not we set up a retrofit company. The start on the work for council homes to retrofit is a good start, but it needs to be rolled out across the whole of the city. So the combined authority needs to get on with it. I appreciate you taking on board my suggestions around recognition of the social enterprise sector and the voluntary and community sector. They're important partners, and I'm sure that the voluntary sector could spend that £1 million immediately on picking up some of the services that are being dropped because of the cuts to public services that the government is forcing upon communities. So we absolutely need this new body to work hand in hand with these sectors that are really important to social and environmental provision in the city. So we talked about representation, but I also think it's important that there is scrutiny. So it would be absolutely important for those that are having a voice from Exeter on this body, that they have a role of not just being advocates, but actually scrutinising what is happening and making sure that there is action across the county, but also that there are benefits that really accrue to Exeter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think, as has been said before, we don't really have any choice in signing up to this deal. There isn't really an alternative. If we don't give our consent, it will happen anyway. And I think you will recall, Lord Mayor, that my views on local government reorganisation are on the record. I think I'm the last member of this council to vote against Exeter City Council becoming a unitary authority because it was too small. And I think I'm the last member of Devon County Council to vote against their unitary bid because they were too big. And I would argue or agree with Councillor Mitchell that because Devon is complex with lots of rural areas and towns and cities, the structure we have at the moment is complicated with parish, town, the city councils, district councils and the county council, but it is one that works. And I think through the pandemic, devolving certain powers and responsibilities to different councils worked very well. The City Council did the economic grants, the other grants came through the voluntary sector or the county council. So I think that complicated structure, even when it's placed under great pressure, does actually work. And I think a big unitary for Devon wouldn't be right, just as small unitaries wouldn't be right. I'd still say, as I said, that when it happened, that Torbay is far too small to be a unitary, and I still think it's far too small to be a unitary. And the only thing that's functioned well are the schools. And I think that is a local lesson for us all on our doorstep, and one of the strong reasons why I was against this council going down that route on the current boundaries, of course, Lord Mayor. I understand that the restraints within the bid and the emphasis on transport. I'm surprised the leader's bus was okay today. The buses have been absolutely dreadful today. Yesterday they were dreadful. They were dreadful just now when I was coming up, and they seem to be dreadful every day. As you will know, the E1 just doesn't turn up at all now at various points, and I'm sure that's similar for everybody in the city. It really can't go on like that. And whether it's a shortage of drivers or a shortage of buses apparently, or just a shortage of everything, quite frankly. But you're not going to get people to come out of their cars while the so-called bus service is just a shambles, quite frankly. I do particularly welcome the emphasis on the housing, the re-emphasis about that. That's good. For a long time we've tried to bind the county council into looking at its own assets and resources to provide affordable and social housing options with its property and its land, because we know, as Councillor Ledbetter knows as well, it's affecting our business as a county council because of social workers and teachers and so forth, because they simply can't get any accommodation. So that the upper tier authorities do need to buy into the housing agenda and not shrug their shoulders and say, oh, it's not our problem. But regardless of what structures are proposed here, and I do think we've dodged some significant political bullets, Lord Mayor, because we could have had another elected mayor, which would have been a disaster. As we know in Torbay, we had that and it didn't work out, and we have to have a referendum to get rid of it if we wanted to get rid of it. And we could have had a significant reorganisation, which would have not been good. Even a Devon sort of split with Plymouth and South Devon, and I don't know where Exeter would have gone in with North Devon and East Devon. Goodness only knows where that would have went. But the real issue here, of course, is about resources. All of these structures are about trying to find new magical ways of getting new resources into local government because we've lost so much funding, making us bid against other local authorities or bid for one-offs or projects that don't go anywhere. And none of that is going to be the answer to this council's problems or Devon's problems. And as you know, Lord Mayor, however I've been elected to this council, I've never supported austerity, and I still don't support austerity, and that's the big issue here. The councils have been starved of money for far too long. We're at almost the thin end of the wedge, and I hope that a new government, if it's a Labour government, will bring those resources to the table, because those are the resources that do need to be brought to the table, and only then will we get the real change we need to do. I know what the council wants to do. I think that we all want to do more affordable social housing, boost the local economy significantly, improve infrastructure significantly, but we're not going to do that unless we've got the proper resources. So We have to do this deal. I'm sure the leader will make robust representations, but the bottom line has to be resources. And I think, he will emphasise that in the representations. I should be supporting this deal.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. I don't see any further hands, but Councillor Wright, would you like to use your... Oh, Councillor Pearce, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Just reflecting on this proposed deal, it's pretty uninspiring, it's unambitious, it's undemocratic, as we've heard from many members. I think the leader referenced the fact that this deal currently sits at an investment of 16 million. Well, that builds half the houses we're trying to build in Whitton at the moment. It's only just twice the materials reclamation facility that we're about to hopefully approve later on. There's nothing there for us. It doesn't improve the lot of our city. It removes powers. It is not devolution, as Councillor Mitchell said. Devolution is the transfer of powers from a greater to a lesser. Powers stay as they are within this, or they move up. They move from Devon County and they move from Torbay to the new combined authority where transport is concerned. So our colleagues in Plymouth are absolutely right not to get involved in this. The guidance, the documents, the consultation that goes along with this proposal is lovely, it's fluffy, it's woolly, it talks about coulds and shoulds and maybes, and then you look at the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, the actual legislation, and there is will and must, and those are the actions that will take place. We look at the Freeport that's going on down in Plymouth at the moment in South Devon, where the local leadership in Plymouth, currently a Labour leadership, are saying it's going to be remaining within the city confines. The actual legislation allows it to go 75 kilometres encompassing the entire national park. That might not be a Labour priority, but who knows if that authority changed hands, would the people of Princetown be affected by this devolution deal, a combined county authority where their people have no vote and no say, and equally doubly impacted by a Freeport, which is stretching all the way from the coast right across the moor. This legislation is very dangerous and should be, we're right to note the report, but I think we should be against this legislation. It doesn't deliver for our citizens in Exeter. There's 145,000-ish residents here and there's 165,000 residents in Torbay. They get 3 votes, we get no votes. How can that be right? We're in danger here as a city of turning into the good people of St David's, who are completely out of democratic deficit where their members abstain or don't vote more often than they do vote. We're not even going to have the opportunity to abstain, we're going to have no vote. So I think we should be really, really cautious about the future of this and just be against it, because it is not inspiring, it's not going to bring enough to us. Yes, there's some money that might come from skills and a new body for that. We can all accept that the LEP completely failed on the skills agenda, but what we're going to replace it with is another failing body. Who's going to sit on there as the voice of skills and education? Is it going to be the fantastic people from Exeter College or Exeter University, or will it be somebody from South Dartmoor College or Petrock College, or who's it going to be? Undemocratic, nobody's electing those people. The business voice, who's that going to be? Is it going to be our Chamber of Commerce? Is it going to be, who's it going to be? We don't know. Is it going to be the chair of the Freeport? We've got no idea who these advisory bodies are going to be made up from. It's completely undemocratic and we should be against it as it removes the voice of Exeter citizens from decisions that they should be involved in. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. And at this point, may I remind people regarding my opening remarks, and can we treat everyone in this chamber, please, respectfully. I have Councillor Wardle, and then I have the Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Wardle.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to endorse what other colleagues have said upon this particular matter. The first thing that strikes me reading through these papers is that the combined authority does not have the inconvenience of elections for itself. Yes, there are elections for Devon County, there are elections for Torbay, but not in itself for the CCA. So that seems to me to indicate a lack of accountability for that particular body, which is going to be in charge, apparently, of the affairs of Devon. So, as Councillor Pearce has said, we have 3 seats for the county, 3 seats for Torbay, 2 non-constituents and non-voting seats for the district council, and 2 others, a business voice, whoever that might be, a body for skills and education, whoever that might be. Now this seems to me to be far too cosy. But
Thank you, Councillor Wardle. Councillor Reid, then Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, so we did have an outbreak of consensus, and it was really nice while it lasted, wasn't it? Thank you very much for your comment, Lord Mayor. I think that is extremely relevant, and that's what I want to comment on. I agree with Councillor Mitchell. I agree with everything the leader said, and Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Moore said, and I agree with much of what Councillor Pearce said, except this outrageous claim that the residents of St David's are suffering from a democratic deficit, which is completely unworthy of this chamber. It's not even factually true, given that turnout's very high. I hope members can agree with me that that is a really cheap jibe. It's not accurate, and we don't need that kind of behaviour in this chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will be brief because everybody has made some very, very good points. I just wanted to thank the leader for his work on this, because I know that he has been trying desperately hard to get this through, to have the districts have a proper voting seat at the table. And I know that that work will continue if this deal does go through. We all hope that there'll be a different government in place and maybe they'll just knock it on the head. But, so it seems a lot of debate over £16 million. £1 million already, as you've said, to actually get this far. Goodness knows there's so many places we could have spent that £1 million. Really good points from everybody. But I would also like to say this has been very much all of us together agreeing on this, so let's not take pops at each other, because if this does go ahead, we will need to stick together very much as a City Council to try and at least have that voice around the table. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Leader, would you like to sum up?
Yes, Lord Mayor. A few points too. I think one of the main concerns I do have, and Councillor Wardle has hit on it, is what it may or may not enable going forward. That is a concern of mine. At the moment, there is no sucking up of powers. No sucking up of powers. Actually, Lord Mayor, I think we should suck down powers, to be quite honest. And I think some of my friends on the district actually agree with me. I do believe being more local, more attuned to what residents are asking, a lot of them see it that way. So that is a job that we mustn't allow, is what I would call a drift. A drift of, okay, CCA, will you deal with that for us, will you? And that is a concern of mine. I believe in speaking with many of the other leaders who I've got good relationships with, to be quite honest, and that is cross-party, independents, Liberal Democrats and Conservative members. And we are one on that. And Councillor Mitchell pointed out that much of the document, because we agreed that if we are to have a voice, we need to have that collective voice. If we are 8 voices all saying something different, it's ideal for those 2 authorities to be able to say, well, we can dismiss that. But if we're saying one thing, and that was the basis of it, the issue of the 2 seats, and it's quite curious. Well, John Park won't be listening into this. I know he's got other things to do than to listen to us. But you would have noticed in it, it says there is 1 seat unallocated. You've all read that, haven't you? And my argument is coastal, rural and urban. Work it out, everybody. Work it out for yourselves, what that would look like. Because there would be a democratic deficit otherwise. So what I've been trying to do is to work on, it's no fashion concept, Lord Mayor. We don't do it much now in these days of polarised politics. Consensus. I don't know if we still do that anymore. I've been trying to get a consensus with my friends on the districts to get us to a place whereby we've got it for there. And then you sort of draw stumps at that particular moment, and then you see what you can do. There is no soaking up of powers, and Councillor Hannaford is right, there is no local government reorganisation, because if you read some of the combined authority stuff in Acts in the first place, you go into a combined authority, and you automatically trigger a local government reorganisation. And right at the very start, I was on about that. And to the degree I felt like they were going to ease off again. And now we've got that commitment that it is not a local government reorganisation. All right? And so these were the prime things I was focusing on for the city. To keep our independence, to keep our powers, to make sure we can influence those things. But also then, to do what I think we do very well, Lord Mayor, is our convening role in this city, amongst others. And I think our convening role is very strong, very powerful, it's soft power. And I think we exercise that, all parties, very well in the city. And I want us to have that influence. Some of the things Councillor Pearce has said is right. There is a democratic process. But it was nice to have regard from the leader of the Liberal Democrats. And momentarily, Councillor Moore, momentarily you were agreeing, but then you came out and said that we've differed and dallied on retrofit for the last 3 years. You just had to say it, didn't you? You just couldn't, because housing is a very important thing. We are part of that housing commission, part of that housing task force. Retrofit is very important. And I would have thought you might have just had a little bit of a clue why we haven't rushed to set up a retrofit company. Sometimes it don't work, does it? You know, when you start doing those things, you've got to really think about that. So it's about working with partners. It's about getting this stuff. Getting that power of convening is what we need to do. So as I said, I would like to see powers sucked down. We have to be very mindful that this isn't a Trojan horse. Okay? And I want to be careful, I'm not mixing metaphors here now, but we have to make sure that people in Exeter have their say. Because many of us will say as we go around the city, they look at the city council first and foremost. No disrespect to my friends on the county, but they do. They do. And it's just a matter of fact. The county functions are very, very important. Very important. And we will be able to hopefully have some sort of influence on highways. And I mentioned convening in soft power just now. And I'm going to say it before next week. Through proper dialogue, convening, persuasion, and that sort of thing, you can be successful for getting the return of the P-bus to a few routes which we need to get. And actually getting a commitment from Stagecoach to improve the e-service around Exwick. I don't know, I must be up for election, but they will be improved. It's through that convening, it's through that discussion, and that's what we should be doing more. Convening that power, talking to people, using our influence in this city, which is very strong of all parties. The city is an important driver in Devon. So, yes, they're right to be my conscience up here, the councillors who've made reference to these things. I do. But what I will say is what we've managed to secure is the city at the moment. And I think all 39 of us councillors will say that is one of the primary important things, that we keep our independence as a city council. We don't want to become a glorified town council or parish council. I think they're very important. If anybody sits on them, they're very, very important. Actually, they have more powers than we do, because they can raise their precept beyond 3%. If you look at some of the Somerset and stuff like that, we can only put people's charges up by 10 pence a week, if you know what I mean. So it's very important. So all we're doing is noting, Lord Mayor. I don't think it's over by a long way. I think what we need to do is to have regular reports from the CCA coming back either to executive or scrutiny. I'm happy to look at that and whatever that is, because I think we should. There will be a scrutiny process within it, but I think we as a city council should use our powers of influence as we do to hold that CCA to account at this moment in time in what they're doing with all that stuff. And I think we can do that. We can do that through our convening power. and I certainly know the district. So, Lord Mayor, it's the best. It looks like this at the moment, and so we are noting it, and we are approving our submission, which will include about the third sector. That will go in, and I will make sure that the document that we send in is made available to all councillors to see what we have said. And then I don't know if the county pallbearer will share all their stuff with them. I would like to. And so that is it. So I hope everybody will support the recommendations as they stand at the moment with the report amended as I've suggested, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, members. I will now move to the vote. So all those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Lord Mayor. That has been carried.
Right, we will now move on then to agenda item 2 on page 49 of the agenda, which relates to the report on the allocation of the capital funding for the MRF. Councillor Bialik, I understand once again you will introduce this item.
Lord Mayor, I wish to move the recommendation 2.1 on page 49, and once seconded I will speak to it, Lord Mayor.
Do we have a seconder?
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Bialik.
Lord Mayor, this is a very important piece of investment that this City Council will be making. And would have we had an extraordinary meeting to deal with the devolution alone, I don't know. But this is a reason why we had an extraordinary meeting this evening. Because, not just because it's just before the pre-election period, but it is major funding, and it is also something we need to be cracking on with. We cannot wait until after May for this sort of thing. This is a major investment, and one we have to make because the facility is so important to Exeter, and it needs an upgrade to increase capacity and allow it to continue serving the needs of the city. Currently, around a third of the city benefits from food waste collections, which is a good achievement. But we simply can't collect more food waste than we already do. And that's because we have reached maximum capacity under the term of the Environment Agency operating licence for the depot at Exeter Road. For us to collect more, we need dedicated food waste bays and environmental enhancements. That's what the investment will create. If funding for the works is approved, a contractor will be secured, and once construction is complete and operating permit revised, the food waste rollout will be right across this city. Well, when I speak to residents on the doorstep, like many of us do, food waste collections is something we clearly want. There is a strong desire to see this service rolled out right across our city, and that is what we will do. And lots of people are, of course, waiting to see this. Where food waste collections have already been introduced, the service has proved very popular. Between April and December of last year, more than 1,000 tonnes of food waste was diverted away from residential waste to anaerobic digestion, where it ends up as a soil improver and fertiliser. Investing in the MRF will make a big difference to the recycling rates in Exeter. As a city, we throw away one of the smallest amounts of waste of any locations in the country. But we do need to improve our recycling rates, and this is what it will help us do. People will rightly ask, where will we get the funds to do this when the council's finances, along with all councils throughout the country, remain very tight? Well, Lord Mayor, it will be funded mostly from our SIL receipts, which have been identified, which is the money that is paid to the council by developers to benefit the community. Lord Mayor, this will benefit the communities right across the city, and a good allocation of that funding. I am so pleased that we have managed to identify this funding and we can get the work done, Lord Mayor. The MRF is a critical facility for Exeter. It's where all our recycling is sorted, and this £8 million investment will bring some major improvements. It is very important that we do this, Lord Mayor, and we intend to do it. The key priority and something that we need to do, and that this facility to properly work across the city, and this investment will achieve that. As well as allowing the rollout of food waste collections to be completed, the project will ensure that the MRF will continue to operate effectively for the next 10 to 15 years. It will modernise the operation, allowing us to improve the quality of what we recycle, which increases its value and increases our capacity to protect the operation against future housing growth in the city. Exeter is growing, Lord Mayor, all the time. It is a place where people want to live, and because it's a great city with a great quality of life, as we all know, it is important that facilities like the MRF keep up with the growth of the city. Lord Mayor, I do hope members approve this funding strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I will now open to debate. So Councillor Mitchell, then Councillor Moore. Anyone else?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As I say, I was somewhat taken aback at the leaders' meeting when the leader announced this decision was going to be made at full council. He didn't inform me that he'd been on holiday to Damascus and made a triumphal return. That's for the biblical references, etc. We fully support this. There's no argument. We all want this to happen. Right? Our own view on this side is particularly we'd like to add glass collection to the remit, because although we're told there's no money in glass, etc., there's a public service element, particularly in many of our inner city wards, of clearing up the debris we get with glass collection. And I think particularly sorry for dog owners who constantly write to me about the damage their dogs are suffering with broken glasses around in the city. So I just hope that in future we can add that into the collection basis. It was, as I say, I would be interested to know from the leader where the inspiration for this came from. Was it anything to do with, it was from you? So you have been to Damascus. The situation is, I understood that this was a proposal put by us at the budget, not voted down by your own group at that budget. We now come back 2 weeks later with an almost identical recommendation, which I assume now you're all going to vote for. We are going to continue with our position. We are in favour of this. We want this to be done as quickly as possible, and we will vote with you to get this done.
Councillor Moore, then I have Councillor Wood, then Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this report. As my colleague said, we very much welcome this. And as you said, Leader, this is a critical piece of infrastructure for the city. The food waste rollout is well overdue. I think it was 2019 when I joined the council when it was first discussed. So I hope that its complete rollout will be very soon. Yesterday I enjoyed watching a little video produced by the portfolio holder for waste and recycling. It was really informative, and it was challenging residents to help the council to further reduce those levels of waste that is produced by the city, and with an aspiration to become the third in the country in terms of actually the lowest levels of waste produced by the city. Once residents have produced their waste, however low it is, it then becomes the responsibility of the council to dispose of that appropriately. So this investment in the MRF will help us deal with food waste collections and improve the recycling rates. Obviously, good levels of good quality material is important to ensure it can be recycled and that council can get the money that it needs from the sale of those goods. Now, Leader, I do listen to the Leader over the years, and I've learned that he's interested in football. And using an analogy, I understand that Exeter, with our 25% recycling rate, is languishing somewhere in the bottom league. So in the Devon League, somewhere around the bottom. And what we need is we need to become a Premier League recycling facility. And so we want to see that those rates raising up to at least 65%. When can we expect to see that? Is that going to be this season? Is it going to be next season? Or do we need to replace the manager?
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think it's important when we talk about recycling and waste disposal to note, as has been said, there are two sets of statistics here. There's one, the amount of waste created, all of it. Now, Exeter, for whatever reason, I don't know how, but I'm really proud of my fellow citizens that we produce the least amount of waste. Really low waste. That's great, that's fantastic. So what's left that reaches our facilities is a much smaller amount. So when we're talking about percentage rates of recycling, it gets more challenging the less you have. Now our recycling plant was one of the first in the county, if not the first. It was set up, some of it was second-hand equipment. Real groundbreaking stuff. And it's something we should be proud of, because not only do we produce the least, our recycling facility is fantastic. I'm sure Councillor Rees and I went round recycling. Very, very informative, very effective process. Our MRF was the first in the country to be able to deal with flexible plastic. Just one example of what you get with the quality that we've got, but they are working with old equipment. This sort of equipment is only meant to last 10 to 15 years. It's well past the sell-by date, it's overdue for renewal, and we all know, especially if you live in Vin, how fast the city is growing, and therefore the resources that developers have paid into the city to enable it to grow its infrastructure, it's entirely appropriate that not only do we expand and improve the amount of recycling we can do, but also that we recognise and upgrade what is now very old equipment. So we will be looking at not only the creativity and the effectiveness of our current recycling team, which are doing marvels with old equipment. They'll have new equipment. They'll be aiming for a 96% turnover. So those little sneaky percentages, what does it mean? We hear a lot about that from the opposition at various times. The reality is, of the recycling, that reaches our recycling centre, 96% of it will be recycled. You have to allow them the 4% because people do put the daftest things in their recycling and it ain't recyclable. So you can't ask them to do 100%, but 96% is one hell of a target to aim at. And they recycle materials, as I say, that other parts of the country just don't. We do flexible plastics. Also there, if you go down there, as we did, there's really hard plastics, weird plastics, like the plastic that's used to create the buoys that float in the sea. That's recycled, that's turned into crumbs, which are then used for all sorts of different productions. But it's recycling things that nobody else recycles, and that is with old equipment. So my hat off to our team, they do an amazing thing. Let's give them the tools for the job and see what they do, because they are going to really, really turn the tables and produce 96%, which is fantastic. Thank you.
And thank you, Councillor Wood, and thank you for directing your comments towards the Lord Mayor. That was very helpful. I now call upon Councillor Hannaford, then I have Councillor Reid, and then Councillor Denning. So Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I do welcome the investment in the facility, and I think there is much to be welcomed. It's also outlined in the report in regards to the investment in play areas and the Pinot Community Hub, which is, very much needed with all the new building in the capital strategy. I'm not quite sure why we're spending so much on cycle lanes when we're not the Highways Authority. Perhaps the relevant portfolio holder can come back to me at a later point. It does seem quite a chunk for us to be spending when we're not the Highways Authority and don't have the responsibility for it. There may be a valid reason that it's in connection to Exeter City Council land or to improve connectivity in that part of the city. But we were told earlier that we don't have the responsibilities around that area, but we seem to be investing quite heavily. The leader will probably remind me that the County Council didn't invest in a new bus station, which is a fair point. I thought you might just do that. But I do think it's important. The points about the growing city are extremely valid. And I also think not only the age and the effectiveness of the machinery, but also the working conditions for our people down there, and this investment will support that. The leader will not be surprised. I still don't like the idea of on-street sorting. I think our refuse workers should go down and do it properly in a proper facility, rather than out in all weathers traipsing around doing that. I'm hoping that's still our position, because I think that's important for us to maintain that. I don't think it's appropriate, safe, and I think it probably adds to the congestion in places, particularly in Exeter, more than the rural districts. But what I must say, and I'm sorry to break the consensus, is looking at the proposal tonight and how tight the SIL money is, I have to say, let us not forget that so much SIL money that had to go into St Sidwell's Point because it was so over budget. And it's a wonderful facility. It should be for the amount of money that it's cost. But I have to say, as a local ward member, I look at St Sidwell's Point and wonder about some of the play equipment and other infrastructure that we didn't get, because I can remember when replacing pyramids was going to cost £12 million, and I won't say any more, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. I now have Councillor Reid, then Councillor Denning, then Councillor Miller. Anyone else? No? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, thank you. Yes, so we're fully in support of this proposal, which is indeed why we proposed it ourselves a few weeks ago. But glass recycling is a big miss. So I would like the leader, if he could address that point and let us know when we will have doorstep glass recycling, please, Lord Mayor, because it's something that equivalent cities of our size have been doing for years. Bath has been doing it for over 10 years. I think the residents of Exeter will, if they find that £8 million is spent renovating the MRF, but we still don't have doorstep glass recycling, will regard that as a bit of a failing. So I'm really hoping that that can be addressed. Yes, I also have taken a tour of the MRF. Councillor Ashton and I went together and had a lovely time, didn't we? Seeing how it was all sorted, all the fantastic machinery, which puts the metal over here and the cardboard over there and the paper over there. Absolutely, absolutely brilliant. And I just wanted to clear something up for Councillor Wood, Lord Mayor, in terms of why it is that Exeter sends the least amount to waste. And it's a little known secret that you can read in the data, which is that a big part of the answer is because we have very low levels of garden waste. And the reason we have very low levels of garden waste is because, compared to Devon, is because we are not rural, we are a city. And so while it is great how we do recycle a lot, and I completely agree with Councillor Wood, Lord Mayor, about all the amazing things that we do recycle here, milk bottles are turned into milk bottles, things are turned into old kayaks, are turned into new kayaks, absolutely astonishing, but I don't think that we can regard it as a badge of pride that we don't have so many gardens. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Denning.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lots of points have been said, so I'm not going to say them again, but I think the thing that I expect everybody who's knocking on the doorstep, they ask more about food waste. When am I going to get my food waste collected? So spending this money is going to benefit every single household within Exeter, and it's going to be money well spent. I agree with Councillor Hannaford, it's also going to help the guys that are working down there, better working conditions, and a big shout out, I'm going to say guys, because that's what it is, because they work so hard, and we are going to help them to work even better and obtain even better recycling, and also a big education as well for the citizens of Exeter who will be able to find out more about food waste, how to recycle, and this is going to be money well spent. So I support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Denning. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As Councillor Denning said, great points have been made, so I'll try not to dwell too much. But I think the first point I want to make is make sure our recycling facilities continue to provide the best quality service possible. This has always been a top priority for this Labour group, but we want to make sure we do this in a fiscally responsible way. By approving this funding allocation tonight, we'll modernise our recycling function and make sure the MRF can continue to operate for the next 15 to 20 years, and it increases capacity to make sure it's protected for future housing growth. We'll also deliver on the pledge to roll out food waste recycling across the city, as colleagues have already mentioned, and I'm fortunate enough to live in an area of the city where food waste collection has already been rolled out, and it's an absolutely fantastic service. But an important point I think I want to raise is We're already operating one of the lowest cost waste recycling facilities in the country, and investing in the MRF will mean it will cost us less in the long run to process our waste. So there's not only an investment in our recycling abilities and the city, but also for our future finances as a council. So all of this is undoubtedly good news for our city and our residents. Finally, I think it's important to mention that this funding is available because new developments in the city have played their part and contributed these funds to help support the city's infrastructure. An appropriate and high quality development, which is well thought out, not only brings new homes and amenities to our city, but also supports our other priorities as a council. So this is what our Labour-led council is delivering. This is what the difference we're making to the residents of the city, and that's why I'll be voting in favour of this tonight. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Leader, would you like to sum up? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wright, do you want to no? No. Over to the leader.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So we had an impassionate plea from you, Deputy Lord Mayor, earlier on about let's keep it right here and everything else. Yet I personally get these jibes, Lord Mayor. Have you ever heard it, Lord Mayor, in your experience of sitting in that chair? Shocking. Absolutely shocking. Keep your jibes to social media, don't bring them in here. And speaking of football teams, by the way, good teams need to build well, need to go forward, need to have a good strategy. You need to have those tactics on the pitch, and that's exactly what we will be doing. Councillor Mitchell, I don't know, but the long-term memory seems to have escaped you here, because the MRF just wasn't talked about in the budget. The director has been talking to SNP for a long time. We bought a paper in December to you. We actually had a part 2 discussion on it, if you remember. I actually tried to embrace you by saying, talk to me about it and do it. You chose to do it in another way. And now you say you're surprised. Well, we had every intention of doing this. As for glass collections and rollout, what I intend to do is to ask the director to give me a written detailed response to that, which I will issue to all councillors hopefully over the next few days as to why. I'm not going to try to be trapped by giving some sort of date so you can whack me on the head at another time with it. It is a detailed response, which a lot's been going on, because I've listened to a lot of that discussion in these meetings for many a time, Lord Mayor. For many a time. So we'll have a proper reason for that, so they can go out and knock the doorsteps, and when people ask them, they can keep it. Councillor Hannaford, I get the prism of how you look at things has obviously changed, but all I would say to you is, what we've done with SSP, and I would like to move on from that, but people want to keep reminding me to talk about the success of SSP and how we've done a rather lot. There's 2 million users, people have used, 10,000 members, okay? Ask them if we got it wrong. I don't think they have. I don't think they have at all. That was sensible investment for the city. As for cycleways, and you're right, I did write down the bus station right away, by the way. That was something like an investment that the County Council put into their transport plan in 2010, that they wanted to deliver a bus station for Exeter, and they didn't do it. But what we done, as a responsible council, and I'd like to think that's all of us, say, do you know what? We're not going to hide behind and just say, nothing to do with us, and just have an open space. We decided to build a bus station and fund it ourselves. And that's what we have done, Lord Mayor. And I don't take it as a criticism. You know, there's lots of ways to spend money, Lord Mayor, but I think it's been a benefit to the city. The recycling waste, and it's quite funny, I was listening to the Deputy Lord Mayor, which was saying, of course, our rates, we don't produce so much because we haven't got so much garden waste. Well, actually, if you start even interrogating that data, if you interrogate that data, you will see that the reason why a lot of the other districts, rural districts, have a higher rate because they are doing more garden waste. So if you accept it the other way, you must accept that. That is why their rate is quite good in those areas. So Councillor Miller has told us quite rightly on the benefits as perceived by the members of the public. I yet haven't got food waste rollout in my area. We're looking forward to it. People want to see it. But it's not actually something, it is a priority for them, but there's a lot of other priorities that my residents talk to me about. That's the cost of living crisis, the fact that their mortgages are up, the fact that their rents, the fact that their children can't get good housing, the fact that they are held back with their wages. Food waste is very important. It's very, very important. But there's a lot of other issues out there. So, Lord Mayor, I thought this was a good news story that everybody could get and celebrate. But again, we're not doing enough. We're not going fast enough. And I suppose that is the sad things about this consensus, which lasted momentarily and it's gone. We can't even celebrate what we are doing. Well, some of us can. And that I find very, very disappointing, Lord Mayor. We have plans to do much, much more, and we will do much more. Let's get on with this. Let's put our sectarian thoughts behind us. Let's get behind. Let's get the MRF improved. Let's support the staff who do a great job down there. Only today and yesterday I've seen them out in my ward. It's not just because it's me in my ward. Doing the grass, doing the bins, taking the weeds up from the road. They're doing it. A small team working hard, and that's all our workers down there at the MRF. Let's get behind them. Let's celebrate what they do. Let's appreciate what they do, giving them some decent facilities, Lord Mayor. That's what we intend to do. I do hope that we can pass this unanimously. This, what we wanted to do for many a time, not just from February. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. We will now move to the vote. So all those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Lord Mayor. That has been carried.
It's been clearly carried. We will now move on to agenda item 3, which offered the opportunity for members of the public to ask questions, but I can confirm we have received no questions. And the next order of business is item number 4, which relates to questions from members in accordance with Standing Order 8. I can also confirm we have received no questions. So, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Before we finish, I would like to thank everyone for a heated at times, but generally civil debate. And I'd like to invite everyone upstairs for some tea and cake, which is also available, and remind everyone about my coffee morning this coming Saturday. Thank you very much. The meeting is closed.